Nobody's covering this game. It came out a week ago and there's basically nothing on it. That's either a red flag or an opportunity, and figuring out which one is literally the whole reason this channel exists. So let's get it. Regions of Ruin Runegate, published by Raw Fury and developed by Gameclaw Studio. If you don't know who Raw Fury is, they're the publisher behind a bunch of games that punch above their budget. Cassette Beast, Dome Keeper, Monsters Are Coming. They have a pretty good track record of not putting their name on garbage, which is relevant context for what we're about to talk about. Gameclaw Studio are the people who made the original Regions of Ruin back in 2018, a smaller, scrappier version of the same concept. 8 years later, they came back with a proper sequel. Bigger scope, more systems, a full narrative, and a level editor shipped day one. The last part is kind of remarkable for a game this size. Most studios bolt that on post-launch if they even bother at all. So what is this game? You're a lone dwarf. Dwarven civilization has collapsed 500 years ago. Everything's in ruins. You guys see? Of ruin. Anyways, there's monster-infested wilderness, scattered survivors who are basically given up, but you haven't given up. You find a Runegate. See, guys, you get the... Yeah, an ancient portal network built by your ancestors, and use it to travel between regions, fighting through what's left of the world, slowly putting the pieces of your civilization back together. The home base is a crumbling keep called Rivenbrook. That keep is the heart of everything. Every resource you gather, every dwarf you recruit, every enemy camp you clear feeds back into rebuilding that place. And watching it transform over the course of the playthrough from a pile of rubble into something that actually looks inhabited, that's the emotional through line the game is banking on. And it works more than it doesn't. Now, before I get into the meat of this, I want to be upfront about something that's going to affect how you hear everything else. The main story is short. One reviewer finished in about 5 hours and picked up a speedrunning achievement without actually trying to speedrun anything. I myself started playing this game in the morning, and by that night I had finished the story. However, there's still more camps and caves for me to explore and clear even after 12 hours. That number is going to matter differently depending on what kind of player you are. And I'll come back to it properly at the verdict. Just hold on to that for now. The combat. This is where this game earns itself or loses you, and it's more interesting than the early hours suggest. You're carrying 4 weapons at any given time. A light weapon and a shield, a two-handed weapon, a knife, and a range option, crossbows, muskets, throwable spears. You have light attacks, heavy attacks, and the stealth system that lets you approach camps quietly and open with a backstab if you position yourself right. The mechanical vocabulary is familiar if you've played anything adjacent to this space. What's actually doing something different is the skill tree. Most games with skill trees let you spread around and feel moderately competent in everything. Runegate doesn't really let you do that until late hours of the game. The tree is deep enough that committing to a direction actually changes how combat plays. Going range means you're positioning constantly and managing reload speed, kiting, and stealth is its own thing entirely. The point is that whichever lane you pick, by the time you've put meaningful points into it, encounters feel categorically different than they did when you started. That's the design working as intended. The main problem is the gap between you started and your build clicks. That window, probably the first 2 hours, is genuinely rough. The reload speed on ranged weapons before you invested it is agonizing. I mean, truly agonizing. Enemies hit harder than the visual style suggests they should. You're going to take deaths that feel a little cheap, especially in the early camps where you don't have the upgrades to compensate for the combat's rougher edges. It's not unplayable, but it's also not going to immediately communicate why you should stick with it. You kind of have to trust the system before the system has given you any reason to trust it, which I think is something you see showing up a lot in these negative reviews. That and this story being too short. But that's a real friction point, and I think some players are going to bounce off before they hit the other side. Once you hit the other side, it's a different experience. The same camps that were wearing you down start feeling clean. You start making decisions mid-fight instead of just reacting. There's a version of this combat that feels genuinely controlled and satisfying. It just takes a while to get there. I will say, if you min-max too hard and really make something OP, there's a version of the combat that can feel almost boring. I use an axe and shield. By the final boss of the game, I was just blocking and shield bashing until there was nothing left. Don't get me wrong, I'd spent a lot of time making sure that each piece of armor and weaponry I was using was perfect for my means, and I spec'd in a very strange way, mostly pushing damage and going down the shield tree. It was a satisfying power fantasy, yeah. But engaging to play, not really. Now, I've seen gameplay from other builds, and the combat can still be interesting while you are OP, but my specific build felt very stationary. In group fights, it still felt engaging because enemies use different tactics that required me to respond in different ways, but 1v1 fights lost their luster. Seeing fully built out range builds and knife builds made me realize I crafted something that maybe wasn't what I really wanted to be playing. Alright, let me touch on something I've seen a lot of complaints about with this game. The enchanting system. As with most RPGs, you can see that there are enchants you have on weapons armor, and other gear. Like this ring has 30 thorns and 14% experience gain. Now, the enchants that can go on these pieces of gear are limited by an enchanting capacity, if you see at the top there, well, the middle there, right above the enchants. So this enchantment capacity is 34. That means the total amount of enchants I can put on something have to equal that. Each of these enchants has a point value associated to it. Blue enchants are 1 point and purple are 2. You can stack these until you reach the amount of points. So many people have complained that you can just make the perfect gear and everything once you unlock the enchanting table, and it ruins exploring and means there's no reason to do so. And I'm here to tell you that that just simply isn't true, and I don't think these people understood the gear system in the game, because if you notice, this ring right here has an enchantment capacity of 83 out of 15. That's because I found this ring like this. And it is a special named ring that I had to reforge to get the one I wanted, but this ring just comes like this. I cannot make any ring that goes over its enchantment capacity, but you can find gear that does. And when you find the gear that does, if it's not perfect, you bring it to the blacksmith, you disassemble it to learn the recipe, and then you can build it as many times as you need to get it to your liking. This dagger has 42 out of 23. Helmet has 37 out of 16. However, you come down to something like this ring, and I'm at 39 out of 50. I need to fix that. To the people putting in reviews that the enchanting ruins the game and you don't have to explore, I don't think you've understood how this game works and how the enchanting and exploration works. I will say that yes, because you can essentially make whatever piece of equipment you want, you can ultimately make the perfect armor and weapon set for your build and steamroll your enemies. Now, I personally like being able to do that, but you don't have to engage with that system in such a min-maxy way. The main reason I did it was because I found an almost unkillable demon and was having problems with him and realized my gear was garbage, so I fixed it. So that's another pain point that people might want to know about. But also, I wanted to kind of set the record straight because some of the reviews I saw criticizing this simply are not true. The enemy variety is something I want to give credit to, though. They adapt. That's in the actual game description, and it's not just a marketing ploy. If you're always charging in with the same approach, enemies start accounting for it. It's not wildly sophisticated AI, but it's enough that you can't completely phone in the same strategy through every encounter. It keeps combat from going fully on autopilot. Again, unless you're at the end of the game and did exactly what I did. Now there's base building. Let's talk about this because it's going to be really divisive. Rivenbrook Keep is not a base builder in the Rimworld or Dwarf Fortress sense. You're not placing buildings. You're not placing buildings or choosing layouts or any of that. You unlock upgrades in a linear sequence as you gather the required resources and buildings appear. That's it. If you came to this expecting strategic settlement management, you're going to be disappointed, and that disappointment is valid. What the base building actually is a progression system with really good visual payoff. Every upgrade you unlock changes what the keep looks like. The rubble becomes walls, the empty space becomes a forge, the forge gets extended, dwarves start walking around with purpose. There's something that happens when you come back from a hard region clear and you can invest enough resources to change the keep. It's a small thing, but it accumulates. The game understands that the visual transformation of the space is doing the emotional work, even when the mechanics underneath it are simple. Whether that's enough for you is going to depend on what you were expecting going in. The recruiting system connects to the combat and the base building in an interesting way. Out in the regions, you're going to find dwarven survivors in various situations, held captive, hiding, working for people they'd rather not be working for. Getting them back to Rivenbrook isn't always a straight rescue. Some require you to complete tasks for a local faction first, some have their own conditions. The quests themselves are repetitive: raid a camp, rescue a hostage, prove yourself to a chief, repeat. But the variety of how you approach those quests based on your build keeps them from feeling completely identical. Stealth-focused playthrough handles camps completely differently than a heavy weapons run. You can also recruit specific dwarves to be battle buddies and companions. You can have up to 3 of them in your party at once. You can even build specifically to increase their power rather than your own, and that'll also change how you approach camps differently. The world has more personality than the screenshot suggests. 2 regions to explore, lush environments and crystal-filled caverns, and weather actually changes how areas feel. The pixel art style is minimalist but charming. It commits to the aesthetic rather than trying to do too much. There's no voice acting, but rather a dwarven influence type of Simlish, and later on a Middle Eastern influence Simlish. The story itself is thin as a main quest. It sets up the premise, moves through the 2 regions and arrives at the ending that some players are going to find abrupt. The lore is actually deeper than the main quest communicates. There's a lot sitting underneath the surface about dwarven cultures and what happened to them, but the game doesn't do a great job of surfacing it without you seeking it out. There are ancient ruins and shrines to old gods with fairly interesting puzzles dotted around the map. These give more lore and usually a unique piece of equipment that can be build changing if it's the right one. These side objectives, like the puzzles and clearing random camps that have their own little stories going on, is where I'd argue the mashed potatoes of the game are. Not the main event, but as I progressed I found myself looking forward to those more than the main quest itself. Alright, actual verdict time. Here's the honest version. Who you are as a player determines whether this is a buy or a wait. If you're someone who explores naturally, does the side content, wants to fill the keep out, and enjoys feeling the combat system that rewards investment, this is worth $20. The launch discount brings it to $18 until April 28th. And that price for that type of player, I think it's a clear yes. I've heavily enjoyed my time with this game and am going to be finishing all the rest of the content. The combat can be legitimately satisfying once your build is running, and the world has more going on than the review count implies. The base transformation is a better payoff than the simple mechanics that produce it. If you're a main quest kind of player who measures game by its story length and feels done when the credits roll, wait for a sale. Not because the game is bad, but because 5 hours of main story for $20 doesn't hold up, and I'd rather tell you that than have you feel burned. One thing that doesn't really factor into the verdict but is worth knowing is the level editor is there day one. Community content is going to hopefully start appearing. If the base game clicks for you, there's potentially a lot of runway beyond what shipped, especially if you like producing the levels yourself. For me, it's a buy. Again, I started playing it in the morning and I finished in the evening, and that day was fantastic. I highly enjoyed my time with this game, and I'm gonna put in a few more hours in just to see all those last little nooks and crannies before I move on completely. The combat earns itself, the world has personality, the core loop of fighting through something difficult to watch Rivenbrook keep building, that lands. Anyways guys, if you made it this far in the video, a like and a sub would be greatly appreciated. I'm trying to grow the channel right now and every little bit helps. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss my next video. I stream on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays, so feel free to stop by and say hi. As always, I'll be back for another video. Peace out. And a special thanks to all our members for supporting the channel. You guys are what allows me to keep making these videos and doing what I love, so thank you.